Anthony, why have you chosen to stand for the party that you have, or as an independent? And how will your choice benefit Casey?
Well, firstly, thank you for attending tonight and thank you for the opportunity. So I'll break it down into three parts. The first will be, why am I standing to begin with? And that's simply because I believe we have a duty to leave our family in a better position than what we inherited. And when I applied this belief to our country, I didn't feel as though we were leaving the country behind, or leaving the country in a better position for our children than what we've inherited. So why I chose the UAP is simply because from the very get-go of the last 3 years, the UAP has consistently stood up and put Australia and Australians first, and always advocated that we should be putting Australians first. They have been consistent on what they want for the freedom and the rights, and including a Bill of Rights, which is important to me. And I think having a Bill of Rights goes a long way to ensuring that we leave our future in a better position for our children. How it will benefit by me choosing the United Australia Party. I have 18 years of serving Australia, 12 within the Australian Defence Force, including 2 tours in East Timor, and then also 6 years as a member of the Australian Federal Police. I have a history of serving Australia and standing up for the Australian people. And I believe that the UAP is the party that gives me the best opportunity to continue this work and to continue serving both you and the country. And with 151 candidates in across the country, we are a genuine alternative to the 2 major parties and can form government if everyone agrees that our freedom is worth fighting for. So I'll start off pretty at the local level. So I think we've seen over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, an alarming increase in the division of Casey in things like family violence, drug and alcohol abuse, and mental health issues. And the government overreach into our lives and livelihoods has played a significant contributing factor to this alarming increase. So one of the first things that I would like to do, and the United Australia Party would like to do, is end that government overreach and get a Bill of Rights in to ensure that we can end immediately, help address these issues and help address the underlying causes that have seen the spike over the last 2.5 years. In line with that, I'd like to work very heavily with the Lilydale Youth Club and the local council and other places like Una belonging out at Healesville to really start to tackle the mental health crisis in our young people and also in the adult community. There's not enough funding, and what funding is available is not enough to provide the level of service that we need to be providing people to undo the damage of the last 2.5 years of government overreach. Mental health is something that is very important to me. I have had my own battles when I was medically discharged from the Air Force. I've seen what can happen. I've seen firsthand what difference good mental health services can provide and the lives that it can save. So I really want to get to work fixing this mental health crisis because our government's created it. We have a duty to fix it, and we have a duty to fix it to the absolute best of our ability, no excuses. I think secondly, what I'd like to see is an upgrade to our NBN, our electricity, and our telecommunications network. I live in Healesville and I have intermittent NBN. We are regularly subject to power blackouts, and mobile phone service depends really on which coverage or which network you use. Essentially, if you're not with Telstra, you can't get coverage through most of Casey. This isn't good enough. We live in 2022. It's time we drag these essential services into the 21st century and improve them. So I'm committed to working with the council to get them the funding they need to improve the telephone black spots throughout the Dandenong Ranges especially. I also want to see them get the money they need to I guess, storm-proof our electricity network and hopefully get this underground, because every time there's a strong wind, we have a blackout because the trees fall down. And we need trees, so let's put the electricity network underground. And with the NBN, it's not good enough. It should be fibre to the premises. And for most people, they've got fibre to the node or wireless satellite, or even in some cases, they're still using copper network. So let's get the NBN upgraded to what it should have been and to something that can be relied upon. And then with the upgrading of that network, let's build in some resilience for emergency situations. It's not good enough that people don't have access to telecommunications or NBN during extended storm damage like last year. So we'll work with council to ensure that they get what they need to build in the redundancy into the system, whether that be backup generators for NBN nodes or solar or other battery packs for the mobile network. But either way, we'll work with council and we'll make sure that during emergencies and after disaster storms and things like that, that we still have some form of communicating and being communicated with the outside world. And I think at a national level, we need to start paying back the $1 trillion debt. It's a massive ball and chain that's going to be hanging around the legs of the future generations of Australians, and our children and their children and the many children to come will be paying this back. So we want to implement a 15% export license on iron ore to be solely used to pay back this debt, which will then free up our money that we're currently using paying this back and the interest to be put into other things, such as injecting $40 billion into the health system. We've had 2.5 years of a pandemic and the health system is in crisis. We gave up 2 years of our lives to protect the health system. And in that time, the government, both state and federal, did nothing to increase or improve the health system. Well, we're going to end the crisis and we're going to put $40 billion into the health system to help with the cost of living. We want to cap interest rates on existing home loans at 3%. We also want to increase the age pension by $180 a fortnight. And we also want to make the first $30,000 of your home loan each year tax deductible, on top of other initiatives such as a fairer form of indexing for service pensions and for veterans. But the whole thing is about putting people first and putting Australians first. And that's what we're going to set about to achieve.
Is action on climate change urgent in your opinion? And if so, what measures will you take to move away from fossil fuels and other pollutants to renewable and cleaner technologies?
Yeah. So whether climate change is urgent, to me, is not relevant. What is urgent is protecting our environment. We need to do more to protect the environment with which we've grown up in and we've enjoyed. We want to be able to see so that our children and their children get to enjoy the nature, the wildlife, the flora, fauna, all that we've grown up with and appreciated, and that people come from all over the world to see. So we, as a party, want to reduce emissions, but we also know that it needs to be done in a manner which is going to, I guess, not leave us at a competitive disadvantage with our other overseas countries, but also not leave us in a situation like Germany, where they were unable to supply their own country with the energy needed to keep them warm during winter and had to rely on other countries to produce their electricity or energy needs. So we want to use nuclear energy, and I know people have I guess there's a bit of a hesitancy around nuclear energy. The thing of the nuclear energy is we have an abundance of uranium. We can mine it, process it, create local jobs. We can use it to create cheaper energy. And whilst we're doing that, we can invest in renewable technology so that we can transition to 100% renewables without running the risk of having major power shortages or unavailabilities across the country. So nuclear energy is zero emissions, so it's clean. The waste can be reprocessed now to fuel the other nuclear power plant. And just in terms of, I guess, the impact on the environment, Since the 1950s, the amount of nuclear waste produced by every single power plant in America, nuclear power plant in America, would fit into essentially a soccer field 3 meters deep. So the space it takes up in terms of spent fuel is actually quite small. And when we look at also the impact on the environment, roughly a solar farm will use about 75 times more land to produce the same amount of energy as one nuclear power plant. And for wind farms, that triples, or then that goes to almost 300. So we want to use nuclear energy while we transition to renewable technology, just like France and other countries in Europe are now going back to nuclear.
Okay. What action do you propose taking to make the NDIA genuinely more useful and accessible for participants?
Well, I think we can start by making sure that any of the recommendations and all of the recommendations from the Disability Royal Commission are implemented. I think from speaking to people that throughout the community as I've gone around, and their, I guess, what they've experienced with the NDIS, it seems as though there's just too much red tape, and that it's taking too much time for the support, the help, and the services to get to the people. So the one thing they want is just to cut the red tape. And that's what we'll do. We'll cut the red tape. I will fight to cut the red tape and get that support to people when they need it, not 3 months, 6 months, or a year later. I know one lady, she has been waiting 11 years for services. And then with the recent changes to the NDIS, she lost what help she was having. So we've been able to help her now, and we're starting to get her life back on track by just putting her in touch with organisations who are facilitating the NDIS. So we'll give them the funding they need to run the service properly, and then reduce the red tape to ensure that the money gets to where it's needed and the services get to where they're needed.
What will you do to help older women with safe and affordable housing?
I don't know the answers to this, and I'm not going to pretend to know the answers, but I do know that I know where to go and get those answers from. So I will ask those people on the front line, the organisations that need the help, that provide these services, what they need. And then between the federal government, the state government, and local councils, we'll work together to get the funding and whatever support it is that they need to provide the housing for older women. And I know that my grandmother, she's dead now, but she benefited from being a war widow. So there was community flats. We're a little unit. And I think that could be a good way forward, is to have situations like that, but not now just for war widows, but expand that for all elderly or senior citizens.
Now, you mentioned mental health. Could I ask you just to maybe elaborate on that a bit in the context of youth?
So I've seen with my 2-year-old daughter what the last 2.5 years of the lockdowns has done. Her social development has been affected. Now, we know this is going on as each age bracket goes up. So we know that there's a crisis. We've seen it in the Salvation Army social justice stocktake. So I've spoken with places like Una, the health at Healesville. I've spoken with like Lilydale Youth Club. What I'd like to see, and with the council I'm fully in agreement with, is working together to get the funding they need to not only provide the mental health services that they are already providing, because that funding is due to run out at the end of this year, but also to increase it to allow them to expand their services. We've damaged the mental health of our youth, and we need to fix it, and we need to fix it to the best of our ability, and that's what I'll be standing up for to help with. In the event of a hung parliament, I won't personally support either major party right now. What I will do is listen to the people of Casey, find out what it is that we all want as an electorate, and then I will take everything to the 2 major parties, and then see which one is willing to work with us to give us what we need to make sure Casey gets to get Casey going and back on track after the last 2 years. So I'm not committing to either major party. I'm committing to the party that will do the best thing by Casey.
If you're issuing a how to vote card, who are you allocating as number 2 and why?
So we've allocated the Liberal Democrats as number 2. And the reason why is for the last 2.5 years down here in Victoria, they have been an outspoken critic of the government's overreach into our lives, which aligns with our own views as well. So we're going with the Liberal Democrats because we're aligned in our desire for a Bill of Rights for Australians.
Another question. what are you doing to improve the rights and safety of marginalised members of our community, such as Indigenous, LGBTIQIA+, and disabled Australians?
Well, I think in terms of rights, I think that's where that Bill of Rights comes into straight up, that will cover all Australians, not just certain parts of it. And I think if done properly, which it will be, we can incorporate all those sort of rights into a Bill of Rights for everyone, which benefits all Australians, not just certain segments. I think in terms of the Indigenous, having spoken with the Healesville Una belonging place, I think what we need to do is allow them to have more self-determination on how they address their unique problems. And we need to stop trying to tell them how to fix it. So I'm fully supportive of giving places like Una the funding and whatnot they need to allow them to address the issues from a community level up, not from a government level down.
Given there is a diverse, if not disparate, range of political perspective amongst the voters in the vast electorate of Casey, how will you look to best represent those views in federal parliament, in particular when those views are in contrast to your own personal views or in conflict with personal policy positions held by your own party?
Well, firstly, I intend to conduct regular town hall style meetings just like this, where I get to hear people regularly from Casey throughout the community, so I know what the people want. At the end of the day, I'm here to serve the people of Casey and ultimately the people of Australia. I'm not here to serve the party, and I'm not here to serve myself. So I won't be voting on my own personal opinion. I'll be voting on what it is that the people of Casey want, and I'll know this because I will be in constant communication with the community through town hall meetings. At the end of the day, I can't serve or represent the people if I'm not hearing what the people have to say. So I will bring myself to the people so they can have their say.
If you could only do one thing in your political career, what would that be?
Cancel the government's blank cheque to attack our freedom and rights by bringing in a Bill of Rights to protect them going forward for all future Australians. Thank you. So the two major parties have had 80 years running Australia, and our country is broken and divided. But there's another choice, a choice that will put Australia and Australians first. Ask yourself, what have the two major parties done to deserve and earn your vote? We simply cannot trust them to fix what they have broken. So let's not only change the government, let's change the people and clean out the career politicians who have failed us, our country, and our communities. So at this election, all I ask is that you look beyond the party, and when you vote, vote for the candidate that you believe will best represent and serve you, your family, your community, our country, and our future.